This is a high stakes video.
You got beef with that? Hi, welcome back to Our Family Beef.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Brigitte.
In this video, we're going to show you a step-by-step process to break down your own whole ribeye steaks.
You're gonna eat better than you would in a steakhouse and save money doing it.
If you're already part of the community, go ahead and smash the like button, but if you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps out the channel.
Yeah, we love getting to know you guys, so comment down below and say, hi steaks! 1 year ago, we made a video about how to cut up a New York strip loin. Today, we are going to do a video on ribeye.
Ribeye. Yeah, that video is actually one of our most successful videos ever, and following on the tails of that, we're like, well, why don't we cut up a better cut of steak, and like we have a better idea about how to shoot a video now, so maybe it will actually be more helpful. So we're gonna take you guys step by step through everything you're gonna need, what the process looks like, and why it's beneficial.
So let's move out. So let's be real, I'm not cutting this up. This guy is. So why don't you tell us what we need to know and I'll get behind the camera.
Deal. Ready?
Let's go.
So let's talk about what you're gonna need for this whole process. First, I use gloves, and it's not even because I'm scared of getting blood and juices on me. It's actually because these things are really cold, and inside them we're gonna be cutting over and over and over again. They get colder. The problem is as your hands get colder, they get number, and you're running around with a super sharp knife, and you slip and you slice yourself, and now you've got blood and juices inside a cut. Easy to avoid. The gloves actually help you stay a lot warmer, so you're a lot more precise with your cutting and a lot safer. Speaking of knife, you're gonna need one of those. Here's an example. This is what I'm gonna use for the whole process, but hasn't been used for something sensitive like this for a while, and it's not the absolute sharpest. There's a way to help with this. All of you should get one of these. It's world changing. It's a whetstone. It's just this sharpening block that's got 2 different grits on it, and I'm gonna show you how to use that. On a kitchen scale, this is just so I can see that once I get my first piece down, it's about where I want it to be, 14 to 16 ounces. Oh, and cutting boards, like really big cutting boards, because we got a lot of steak. Simple thing with a whetstone, you've got 2 grits. We're gonna link this down below so you can see exactly which one we've got. It's 2000 or 6000 grit. This is a coarser grind and then a finer grind, and you just flip it in between. The water makes sure it's a lot smoother as you go along, and it doesn't take very long at all. So just get your whetstone wet. That's why they call it that. It's wet.
Brilliant, brilliant!
And then run your blade down the whetstone and across as you go. You want to be at around a 15-20 degree angle to get a good bevel on both sides. And then the trick is just to do even number of strokes on each side, decrementing as you go down to just a couple. So if I do 8 that way, I need to also do 8 the other way. Then maybe I'll go to 6, 4, 2, maybe just 1 swipe along it for a good measure at the end. That's the course, and you see all that residue there. That's from the knife. That's come off of there, but it's gonna be a lot sharper. Wet it down, flip it around. Same thing on this side, starting with 8 or 10. See all that on there? Wash off your knife and go to town. All right, go ahead and slice open your steak bags and drain all this juice out. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just gonna make a huge mess when you get your meat over to your cutting boards. We're just gonna be doing one of these at a time because we don't have that much room. Oh, I promised you I would show you what to do with the toothpicks. I got you. Get yourself a toothpick and break it down to about the size you think that you're gonna want your steak to be. So in my case, I'm wanting roughly an inch. So that's about an inch there. I'm gonna go ahead and break it off there. I'm gonna use this to measure how big each steak should be. this is actually pretty thick, so let's see how it goes. So first things first, when I looked up how to cut up a ribeye or New York strip, very similar process, what I found was that most folks advocated cutting this whole fat cap off before you slice the steaks. Now, you might say fat is flavor, and you'd be right, but we're gonna cut most of it off because we're gonna be sous videing most of these. If you wanna know what that process looks like and how to cook these, we'll link that down below and also up here in the cards. But in our case, we wanna cut a lot of it off, but cutting it off at the beginning is not the best strategy. So we're gonna slice our first steak and then check the size of it. When you do that, go ahead and get your knife in place and score where the toothpick lands, kind of all the way down the fat. That's gonna give you an outline to slice along. It's a really nice thick steak, and I'm just gonna slice through the fat cap, through the steak, all the way down along that line. Oh, this sharp knife really slices through the steak neatly. And there you go, there's our first steak. So I'm gonna weigh this guy up here and see how much he weighs. Again, we're going for 14 to 16 ounces. This might be a little light, but let's see. Oh, guys, this is a 20-ounce steak. I'm gonna keep it, but that's too much. But wait, there's some stuff on there I'm gonna cut off. So let me cut off some of this fat cap around the outside and see if that's still gonna be right. We're gonna cut most of them off at the end. Okay, so I cleaned this up a little bit off camera. I'll make sure to do the rest on camera, but let's see how much this guy weighs. Almost exactly 1 pound, so 15 3/4 ounces. So that 1 inch is perfect for about a 1 pound steak. That's gonna be an awesome meal and a lot of them. Use the same process all the way along, slicing deep slices all the way through that steak. Quick change. Had to get some blue gloves. The black ones were covered in steak, and my son had a nightmare, and we had to address that because parenting life. But we're gloved up and back to it. Let's go. Oh, and if you hadn't heard, we now have a Patreon. This is an awesome way to help support creators you love. Plus, all 3 tiers of support offer access to our exclusive chat community on Discord. This is a place for the core of our community to get to spend time together, and we can't wait to see you guys there. And if you choose one of the top tiers, you get a shout out from us in an upcoming video and even make it into the credits for as long as you're a supporter. If you aren't into Patreon, we totally get it. We have YouTube memberships set up as well with the same tiers and benefits. You can find the link for Patreon in the description below and the join button for YouTube memberships right next to the subscribe button. All right, that's the first one finished. I'm gonna go a lot quicker on this second one. Then we're gonna trim off all the pieces we don't want. And some of it we're gonna be able to save for other types of dishes, like Philly cheesesteaks or kebabs, things like that. You can even save the fat and render it down, which we've done. Let us know if you wanna hear more about that. But let's jump into number 2, because we gotta wrap this thing up. As you're cutting, you're gonna feel a little more comfortable with it, but make sure you don't get too comfortable. Steak is wiggly, it jiggles. As you bunch things up with your hand or the knife, you might feel like you're cutting straight, but you might not be. So make sure you actually keep the toothpick on hand and continue to check for your width. You'll see I'm doing that even as I go along, so I can get these as consistently wide as possible, because a narrow end ends up being a burnt end in a skillet or in the oven. Okay, we got them all cut up, and now we're gonna trim the fat. Important thing to note here. It's totally fine to take this part off, no matter how you're gonna cook it. If you're gonna cook it with a sear or reverse sear method, not using sous vide, I wouldn't cut all this fat on the edge off. I'm gonna cut most of it off just because it won't render out well in the sous vide cooking. But if you're not gonna sous vide, don't cut it off. All right, do you see all these, man? Mm-hmm. Now what you want to be mindful of here as you're cutting fat is you don't cut too much off. It's fine to trim most of the edges if you're going to be sous videing, but one way or the other, it's good to have a little bit there to sear in the skillet or under the broiler, however you're finishing the steak. And you definitely don't want to cut the fat out of the middle. You'll see the fat seams kind of run into the meat, into the marbling. And if you get too aggressive, you're gonna end up affecting the center of the steak. And the fat is actually holding these together because they're ribeyes. So make sure you're careful there. Don't get too excited about it, too overzealous.
because if you cut a piece out of the middle, the whole steak might start to fall apart, and then you've got little pieces of steak rather than these big, beautiful, giant 1-pound steaks we're cutting here today. Make sure you save as much of the meat that you're getting little pieces of as you go, because that is great for stew meat or kebabs. I mean, this is good steak, guys. Don't let it go to waste. Now, you can use freezer bags for these, but I recommend vacuum sealing them. If you're gonna put in the freezer, it helps them last longer and not lose as much texture. If you've gotten value out of this, go ahead and leave a comment below and let us know. And I guess say hi, steak, based on what my wife said. And subscribe if you haven't yet. If you want to see more of our videos, they're on the left. And until we meet again, don't forget, life is better together.
You!
Ready?
I'm such a cut up.